Yeah, I think
We are live, committee and then stickers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
People on the side, wait, Senator, that's not.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's-
Sunrise over there. It's so great.
Yeah.
It's
We are
sunrise and see the.
We are changing the
We'll get our
subject.
people on, so.
Thank you. Can't wait to see it. We are going
You're gonna wear the
on
first
to
sticker.
veggie,
Thanks.
another favorite topic. So this is the first bill that we've gotten, we're gonna walk through them rather quickly, and then we will be able to decide which ones we want to take up and which ones we will have time to take up. Because I think it's fair to say any education tax financing bill is going to start in the other body. It's a revenue bill. Health insurance is ours. I don't think we have gotten any bills on that yet. I don't even know if there are any bills out there. But if we can find a solution, I think we could probably get permission from rules to do it in the last day of the session. But we are gonna have to look at that. Tomorrow, we have a national expert we did one on the, who's going to talk to us about the fiscal impact of recent federal decisions, and since he's here, we're gonna get him in. We had the joint meeting the other day, but the other big crisis, Washington is still playing with extensions. But unless they get their act together very quickly, we're gonna have problems with that too. So, and that obviously feeds into the education funding issue. So, let's go to S-225. It said, this is your bill. Do you wanna say a couple words about what it is?
225, that's the one we were discussing on.
It's veggie.
Sunset, okay, sunset. This is a very simple bill. It relates to sunset, dealing with the sunset we have on TIF districts in life. This is something that, it's really the growth incentive that we're talking about in this particular bill. And this is something that, we've had come back to us over and over and over again. We spend an inordinate amount of time sunsetting it every 3 years and going back over the same thing. And it seems to I think many that, look, this is something that's really part of our landscape. And we spend a lot of time dealing with sunsetting things like this over and over and over again. And I think that we largely have enough experience with this that it's just simply no longer necessary.
Economic, this went through economic development, right? Last year, 2 years ago, when I was down there. And I've got another one for another thing where we keep putting sunsets on it. And the question is.
Yeah, there's some things that we sunset because we want to go back, we want to look at it again because there's a degree of uncertainty or what have you, but boy, we don't have a lot of time. And to keep doing things over and over and over and over again, I mean, there's just simply is at this stage for that particular legislation, it's probably not necessary.
So I assume that didn't make it all the way through the process. The last biennium.
Think of the money we'll save.
Okay, so Rick,
Hi. Rick Sable, obviously the city council. Good to be back. It's been fine. Thanks for having me back.
get here a lot.
This is a complicated bill. Let me tell you something. Then you guys do with these education bills. That's nothing compared to economic development. So S-225 is literally one page. And there's not many bills that I can get on one page, and that's even including all the lead-in language, which I'm going to actually talk about here in a second, because the actual bill is very simple. It repeals session law from 10 years ago in 2016 that initially set the sunset, which I believe was January 1, 2021. That was the initial sunset. So it was given kind of a 4 or 5 year initial window. And that's the bill. But I do want to give a little bit of history, if I can, Madam Chair, because I wasn't here in 2016, so I was kind of curious what happened? Because veggie is not that young. It's been around for a little bit. So I went back to the act that actually created this initial sunset. So this is Act 157 in 2016. It's a 143-page economic development bill that David Hall did. And I don't know how he did this, but probably one of the late nights.
I remember Hinda Miller came up with the veggie name.
So the bill includes a lot of things not relevant here, but it does show how the original veggie was repealed. It was overhauled in 2016. I don't know much about that original veggie program. Obviously, there were concerns the way it was being run or how it was being the model that is now set forward. So that veggie was repealed, and this new veggie that we currently have today was set in statute, set to repeal January 1, 2021. I also noticed in this act there were some workforces, a couple of reviews. This one, H13, VEPSI, which oversees veggie, was set to review certain policy questions about veggie. And then the next law was a technical working group. The Joint Fiscal Committee was also going to look at how veggie should be maybe changed moving forward. So again, this is 10 years ago. And we have today where the sunset has been, as Senator Brock said, pushed back. And we have today where the bill would literally kill off the sunset. So you would not have to come back every few years. There are some advantages to having a sunset. You actually are forced to come and look at it and say, is this program working? But of course, you all have got rid of that before, because when you see a program working, you decide you no longer need a sunset and you just let it live in statute. So again, a pretty simple bill. Happy to answer questions about.
And we will have the folks from veggie come in and talk to us.
The worst part of doing sunsets on bills is that because you're forced to look at it, you then change it even when it doesn't need changing. And sometimes when you do that, you don't necessarily make it better.
But this doesn't change its permanence in any way. It can
No.
always be reviewed or changed.
Anytime
It's
you
just
want to review it, you can review it.
conversation every year.
So Senator, it's a good point. Actually, this repeal does not kill veggie; it kills the application approval. So the statute would remain on the books. They just wouldn't be able to actually offer any except for review the applications to be. So the current veggie award would continue until they are no longer.
And again, I think the argument, like many arguments, like TIFs, is you either believe that these economic incentives create jobs, expansions, businesses that would not otherwise, but for that incentive, be created. And those are views that people tend to hold in Bible. Is it really necessary for the government to do anything to help economic development? We will have folks from economic, come in and talk to us. We will have anybody else that wants to come in and talk to us before we make that decision. But this is just the original walkthrough. Senator Hardy, I see your hand.
Yeah, this is, what is the name of the program, Rick?
So are you noticing a typo?
No,
Oh, there's a typo.
I did.
I was mentioning
It's
it.
something, wait, just tell me what it is in your bill,
Right.
in the bill.
In the each bill, there's a typo, right?
Okay, Vermont Economic Growth Incentives Program.
No,
Incentive
it's the
program?
employment growth.
Yeah, so on the website, it says employment growth. That's what I was like.
Your alleged council made a mistake.
Oh, it's okay.
Because-
It's not the website
It's me.
that's wrong, it's
It's
you.
me,
Okay,
yeah.
so that was the typo?
So
I am not recognizing.
Yeah. My eventual recommendation to the committee was, no matter what you do, if you want to move this, I will need to amend it to change the act name to employment growth And I do want to give an excuse because it's the Vermont Economic Progress Council.
That's
And
Veggie. It is confusing. And but that's why I was like,
yeah, but it's my mistake, and that's something that would be corrected with an amendment. But yes, it is called. the
well, I just want you to know that I thought the website was wrong, not the draft. You know, I had a lot of
I agree.
ideas that you were.
Yeah. And the editors missed it, which that, gives me a little bit of
Yeah.
credit. They also could,
That's part of the problem when we mess with things.
sure, that's,
We tend to rename them or do an offshoot with a very similar name. And it gets confusing. And we write them, so for the average person, it's very confusing. But this is just our walkthrough.
and I didn't
Just
mention,
a little bit, we're just doing away with the sunset.
and I should mention it's set to sunset January 1, 2027. I should also mention that. So that would be, if you don't act, this session, you could do it next year retroactively, but that gets complicated. I wouldn't suggest that.
So, okay, so we
Yeah.
do need to do something. We either need to do away with it altogether or let it die next January. What's there will play out. We need to put another sunset on it. Or we need to say, enough is enough. If we want to look at it, we can look at it. And do away with the sunset. I think those are the three options, and we will hear from anyone that wants to talk to us about it. Anyone that's interested in talking in the public, the lobbying, community, Steve Charlotte, and make sure she has your contact information. Okay. Any questions for Jeremy?
Asterisk instead of bill.
Almost. Johnny can't call it that.
Minus that little one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So committee, that is, I believe our last today.
Unless would you like to tackle the repeal of the reports today?
Oh,
Put that
we
on.
could, I don't know, has anyone gone through?
I haven't seen it.
No one looked at the reports.
Wait, did you give it to us? And
There should be on the website, but if you want a hard
oh, could I have her copy?
copy. we can
Yeah,
get
yeah.
you hard copies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is
We might
2022.
continue the discussion while we're on live
There's a second?
of
Thank
where
you.
we're gonna go with education.
Oh, sorry.
Thoughts after today, I'm still looking for taxpayers to come talk to us. And we are, see. They're getting, Rebecca Holcomb has names she's gonna get me from other states who have done these joint service districts. And we are trying to get the gentleman from Campaign for Vermont to come in who recommended them and the, what numbers they had. I'm looking for hard numbers. So we will be trying to look at that. I think the question is, how much will they save and how quickly? And how do we just say, please do this, or do we say thou shalt do this, or something in the middle? I don't know how that work, and I don't know.
Our proposal was mandatory.
Yours was mandatory, okay. And go online.
Yeah, there's an actual map.
Okay, then that would be something to look at. And maybe within that area, we could look at schools and numbers or, but how do we move this forward, given that everybody says the big cost drivers, none of us are in control. Unless you want to cut teachers' salaries, and that's not an easy thing to do. And not something I don't want to do. Some of this might, but I don't think it would make it through. So how
my math tells me what JFO's math, not mine.
Okay,
If we did take 75 million from the general fund and transfer it to the education fund, that takes the average tax bill increase from 12% to 9%.
that's this year.
Yes.
Next year, everybody is telling us we will not have 75 million.
This year.
We may not have it this year. We just found out we lost a whole lot of federal money for prevention programs. No help buying Narcan anymore.
And we got the T fund.
So we keep, there hasn't been any good news in a long time.
Kicking it down the road it represents a danger in terms of the amount of money we have in case of a real emergency.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
this is something we can't keep kicking down. We're going to deal with it.
we do need to deal with it. We kicked it down after 49. At 46, it needs to be dealt with, and the question is, how do we do it? The other thing that's playing into this is we have pretty much a fixed cost for your employees, your teachers at least. It's negotiated contract, very hard to change. I think we will look at the health insurance. We'll try see if people will talk to us. Some of the schools have gotten out of being high and see maybe.
I think the public schools have to be.
I think they do. Yes,
That's the way statute.
that's the way the bill came out. That was the last time we had a vetoed budget, and we sat here until June 28th, I believe. Everything in the state shuts down July 1st. There is no budget. There's no continuing resolution. It is in the Constitution. Everything stops. State police, state parks, all gone. So there's a big sledgehammer at the end to come to an agreement by the end of June. Most of us don't want to be here till the end of June. So we need to start thinking through how it's not our jurisdiction to talk about the glowing picture of beautiful education at the end. But we can talk about affordable education, but we've got to come up with some hard numbers. You know, if we can get to X class size, because I don't think we've ever gotten to a hard number as to what the class size needs to be financially supportable.
You know, there's a bill.
There's class sizes are, but I don't, did you see any hard numbers?
Yeah.
I
What's
don't
the
remember
total?
any hard numbers.
And class size, how many classes? What kind of classes?
Right,
Eliminate all language classes and you can.
you can do it.
So I think we're talking broadly about Act 73 in the next stage, which is absolutely a relevant conversation, and I think we need to keep having it more testimony. But if I could anchor this in the allowable growth spending cap presentations and comments that we just heard, I would just say three things that are on my mind. Since this bill contemplates for FY28, not FY27, I think this needs to be part of the continued discussion. I do see that when revenues or enrollments decline at universities or in companies, budgets are cut, budgets are capped. We have had an increase in spending with a decreasing student population. And what I'm hearing, what Senator Brock has said, and what I'm hearing from taxpayers is they're looking for a backstop that they're not seeing in the current system. And so I see this as sensible policy that's never been employed to actually see the merit of giving these districts a limit for what they can spend. Now, if they get more kids, my understanding of this is they will be able to spend more. So that's great. I want more kids. That's absolutely what I want. But if their enrollment declines, this will be pressure on them to right size their programs, which is, I think, what needs to happen. It could be painful. It will be painful. It will further motivate the conversation around Act 73 and the consolidation. The last thing I want to say on why I think this has merit, and we should continue discussing it, it is a lot less of a hammer on local control than what Act 73 contemplates. What Act 73 with the foundation formula, it's taking it all away. They're going to get this much money set by a tax rate in this building, and they're going to get that, no more, no less, with some exceptions. But this is capping for the next couple of years, the overall percentage increase, not even having them cut, and still allowing them a lot of variability, flexibility within the current system. So I see this as not nearly as invasive on local control as what Act 73 contemplates to do. So I think it's a conversation worth merit. I think it needs to dig into more of the numbers, but that's just personally where I am. I'm not ready to dismiss allowable spending growth caps based on the testimony today.
I don't know that I'm dismissing it. I think
Yeah.
it's got a long way to go.
Sure.
I think if we are committed to looking at what is happening with VHI and with the health insurance, I think we need to talk about where should those benefits be negotiated? Do we want to throw it back to the local schools? Or do we want, given the performance of the statewide commission, I'm not sure I want them negotiating salaries too, but that's all part of it. I know that the proposer of this bill would like to get it out and get it on its way through the other body.
Somewhere in this process, and I don't want to throw a wrench in it in any ways delays anything. I can't afford to delay. I'd like to get the auditor's office either in or at least inquired about as to whether or not the use of the data in individual school districts is so disparate in terms of what's put in what bucket that we have a lot of meaningless information. This is the thing I think I raised in
Yes,
the meeting we had the other day. Is I remember in 2005, for example, they were all using the same chart of accounts. They're all using pretty different numbers in it for different things, and it was meaningless. And I know I've heard that since, that the same thing is continuing to happen. And I haven't got any current information, but that again concerns me. Is that, are we looking at apples and oranges, or are we looking at every fruit in the basket?
it's helpful to know that we can have the auditor in or the finance people also for the Department of Ed to see what it sounds like with the weighting numbers last year, there was an issue with data and how it was recorded and how it was reported, and they did catch it. And it sounds like, I don't know if they solved all the problem, but at least they found out there was a problem.
Thank you. Senator Shannon, you weren't here last week when we got this bill introduced, and one of the things that the Legislative Council attorney prefaced the conversation with was that there are potential constitutional concerns with the bill. So that is one thing you should know, maybe talk with John about. He's the drafting committee. So that is of a concern. And then when you impose a hard cap like that, I know it's sloped a little bit, but when you impose a hard cap like that, the districts can't reduce certain costs and like healthcare and salaries and things. And that's like almost 80% of their costs. And then there are other things, debt service and other things that are out of their control. So the costs they can control are often the classroom impacts and the things that impact kids directly. So I think a major fear of that bill is that it would end up essentially punishing kids, because those are the people who would feel the cuts. It also doesn't address the cost factors of actual education, budgets. And we already have a spending cap in our formula, that if districts go above it, they are taxed double for going above it. And districts take it very seriously. And I think right now, I think we heard last week that there are maybe 5 districts that look like they might be going that direction and things are still not final. So chances are there won't be any or maybe 1 or 2. So I think, you know, a lot of the testimony we heard today about the concerns with these sort of arbitrary spending caps is that they're punitive but not effective at addressing the cost problems.
We will, it was Professor Teachout, right? That was the constitutional expert at the law school.
You could probably give us an opinion.
I think so.
Could we get a different constitutional? I know,
I don't know.
I think there are other people who have a lot more experience, more current experience with education.
Like who?
I can try to get you someone.
I mean, this is a constitution. We'll have both of, but he's one that we usually use. He's a constitutional professor. And we'll have him come in and talk about it. I'm sure there's risk.
I'm not discounting.
But it's not the first time we've taken a risk.
There will be pain if this goes into effect.
Everywhere.
There's pain now. But my point is managers still have managerial rights, and that you're absolutely right. The cuts will probably be in personnel. We have one of the lowest or highest, however you want to do it, staff to student ratio. So that likely will apply some of those pressures for our declining student population. I don't think anybody wants to hear this, but that is ultimately what I think is going to happen with Act 73 if it goes forward, to right size our school system to provide services that Vermonters can afford. This, I think, is doing it in a less painful, less punitive way if we were to employ this policy and have it in effect. And I do think it would come in staff cuts, but it would still be those school boards that would make those decisions based on them seeing it full year out. I'd be more concerned if we were pushing it for FY27, but I see with FY28, this is a worthy conversation. And then if we're all lucky enough to come back here next January, maybe we repeal it again based on what the actual impacts would translate to be. But it seems like something sensible worth further considering. I'm just not ready to dismiss it.
Okay. Oh, I don't think we're missing anything.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. If we're gonna use a business analogy. I think if a company goes to making big cuts, let's say, they have first looked at their CEO to see if their CEO is doing his or her job. And if he or she is capable of doing his or her job or their job. And I think they also would look to see what systems change needs to happen. You probably haven't had time to look at our report. I hope at some point you do. I know it's daunting because it's a lot of pages, but there are a lot of visuals in there, so it reads fairly quickly. We have some systemic issues that need to be fixed. And we struggle to talk about them honestly and openly. But I am really loath to make any kind of big financial decision in a time of great uncertainty, which we keep seeing in health and welfare. And when we have a CEO who I would say is not up to task. And when we have structures that are highly problematic.
What is it? Are we talking about superintendent? Are we talking, what's your CEO?
My
in your-
CEO is the Secretary of Education and just the capacity of the AO generally.
The AOE has
I'm-
been gutted systemically over the last 2 decades. When did we get to 46?
I'm just gonna say, I don't think you can point the finger at somebody who's been here for a year and a half, 2 years, for the years of
I don't think that's what I just did.
the lead.
Okay,
You
When
said
I
look
asked
at the
if the CEO is capable of envisioning and managing the change that we are trying to envision. And I'm saying, I don't believe so.
first we have to give the CEO a task. And we need to decide. I feel better about this cap because it is not a hard, there's flexibility in there. And the high spending schools generally have more flexibility than the low spending schools. I think the goal is to say to taxpayers, we hear you. It is a sledgehammer. But sometimes it takes a sledgehammer to make people talk about painful decisions.
See it more as a 5-pound mallet.
So,
We need to be on.
we are going to look at the constitutional issues. But make sure we're not stepping, I mean, we could get sued. If schools have the time and money to sue us. We also have a constitutional risk of being sued over inequality of educational opportunity, because those low spending towns are not giving kids the classes that they need. We do not have a statewide high school graduation requirement. So if I can't afford advanced math, it's just not in my graduation requirement. I have that ability. I think the CEO can give us a really good graduation. That is her field of expertise. I think we need to let the agency know what we want them to do. They do work for the governor, and he has told them what he wants them to do. At some point, we all have to agree, the administration and the legislature, what we want to have happen. And that's the challenging part right now. Because there are no simple answers. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, to your point earlier about Beehive, I remember, I think we were upstairs, Ways and Means, we got an update on it a few years ago about Beehive and how it was going and things like that. And Elizabeth Jennings, I think it was, alluded to it, how,
Yeah.
you know, the cost to her as an employee is quite low.
Yes,
And-
the premium.
Yeah, right. And all while, you know, with the ACA
it is very good.
right now, in looking at, I think when we went over it, every time it was in negotiation bargaining, it went to arbitration, and each time it settles with
Yes.
the
Last
union.
best offer.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's something maybe we can look at, and I don't know if it was Martine that brought it up about school boards being able to negotiate that in the past, which I remember.
And the argument when we did it, and again, this one of those forced negotiations, was that the individual school boards, they said, well, the NEA would come in and they got professional arbitrators. And poor
I
little
remember.
East Podunk could,
That's right.
you know, hired the local attorney that had never done it, and they were just outclassed. And they lost every time, and it was expensive.
VSBA wanted the statewide, like nobody else.
And so we put it up there, and it has not played out the way people thought it would. So we will take a look at what the proposals were from the school boards. They gave us a proposal. And we will look at that. There may be something we can do to curb some of that growth. Since that will not be popular, but it may be possible. But think about it, and see where we can go. And
I just wondered, you know, as we start talking about education, one of the things that we're talking about is basic issue of reduced costs. We have to limit cost, just limit cost. And one potential way of doing it, I'm sure I'll throw this out, I haven't really thought it through, or it would not be popular, is to limit staffing certain kinds.
Yeah.
And if you limit staffing, one of the things that that does is it forces districts to work together to come up with solutions that increase class sizes, and it may be in places that are different than those that exist right now.
One of the nice things about the cooperative education services is that you could potentially share staff across a larger geographic
I mean,
area.
it is a broader way to promote new ideas as well as new competition, while at the same time lowering costs, as opposed to putting dollar caps on things,
Okay,
on individual services.
the districting commission is one I've been trying to get on as a joint hearing, and I'll try and get that on next week if we can work out the scheduling. If not, we'll do it and go through.
So to your point, Senator Rogg, I don't disagree. I don't see that as feasible in our current state. In the future world or whatever the world is, I could see staffing ratios when we have more rationally sized districts. But comparing an allowable spending growth cap per pupil to staffing levels, I see that as a lot less invasive on each of those districts that know their school, know their kids, know their priorities. They'll just have within that all of the money to focus at how they see, because they know if one person can sort of do two roles better than the state does, and saying that you can only have two roles right now. So I'm not against what you're saying. I just don't see it as feasible in our current state as compared to an allowable spending growth.
Feasibility is sometimes a product of force.
But that's more force than an allowable spending growth cap. And that's one of my big concerns with Act 73. It's a ton of force. So too much force.
But, you know, we're in a situation now where we've got to solve this problem, at least to the extent it's solvable within a finite amount of time. And probably, if we don't dig into a rainy day to an extent that's dangerous, we're going to have to, I think we're going to have to use.
We are going to have to do something here. Depending on if Washington makes a move in the next week or so, we could be looking at up to 45,000 Vermonters without health insurance. If any significant number of younger, healthier people opt out of buying health insurance, that's going to have major impacts.
Senator Beck, the obvious answer is for schools, is you can simply hire people over 67. That way they will get, you know, Medicare and won't need health care.
So Senator Cummings, I just want to be real quick. By the way, that was a joke.
We are. I couldn't.
I'm sorry.
You would get experienced teachers.
I just want to be really clear on what problem we're trying to solve here. S220, as we received it, is to solve a problem in FY 28 29.
Torture.
Are we trying to solve that problem? Or are we trying to solve FY 27 and that problem?
I don't think we're trying, this bill looks to next year and the year before, beyond. I think it's pretty much a given, unless there is some major disruption in the budgeting, which we aren't anticipating now. We will have somewhere around $70 million to buy down this year's tax rate.
To 9%.
Which is still going to be very painful and unaffordable to people whose incomes are not going up 9%, or their buying power, because oil may be down, but I've heard it's going back up. But food is not down, and housing costs are not down, and homeowners insurance is not down. So it's looked at as a short term saying we understand the problem, but for the next 2 years, we are not going to have $70 million to buy down the tax rate. Now you can say, okay, you vote for the budget, you're going to pay it. You know, I mean, put your hand on the stove and I'm not turning the stove down. You're going to get burnt. We can do that. And maybe that will drive folks to make difficult decisions. It might also cause folks to lose their homes or not be able to pay their rent and not be able to find other rentable properties, which is the real danger that it will make it more difficult for people to buy homes because those property taxes are figured into the percentage of your income, your mortgage is gonna cost you.
What I would say to your comment there, Senator Beck, I'm just answering my local paper's questionnaire on this, is that I support the buy down if it's coupled with something like a spending cap, because I see them as entwined. I'm going to feel more comfortable that it's better fiscal policy if we buy the rate down this year, knowing that next year there is an allowable spending growth cap proportional to how many pupils in a district, so that we start to rein in these increasing costs that our taxpayers say they can't afford. Because then we will not have, well, there won't be allowed in that area, 6 or 7% increase in spending across the board next year. So I feel more comfortable with the buy down this
So
year.
are you saying that, buy down with no spending constraints in FY 27 beyond those already in the law?
I don't see logistically how an FY 27 spending cap would go into play, because what would that do right now? It would do what we did to them with the Act 181 correction. They would have to go back and redo their budgets. They'd have to delay their budget votes. If that's what people are advocating for, I just think it's going to be a harder pill to swallow if we're going to try to get them. And we needed to have that conversation last week because we need to pass it in the next.
I think what's going to be really hard for people to swallow is in 2014, tax rates went up 14%. We had a tax revolt and we say, we listen to you. It's only 9 this year. I think that's going to be a really hard message for Vermonters to swear up.
So to 14, you mean 2024?
2024, they went up 14. We've been here for 2 years. Then we go back to them and we say, it's only going to be 9 this year.
So what you just said is you're advocating for FY 27 to apply in a spending cap, which would make all the budgets that are higher than that have to be redone in the next few weeks.
I don't see how else you get below 9%. I mean, I think that's all that's left.
Well, we're gonna buy them down this year. That's what we have.
Yeah.
And
just wanna
they
make
have
sure
to
that
get
we-
voted.
We are careful enough that we are not shooting ourselves in the head.
The
That's a hard sell. And you could get support out there with half of both chambers to have forced all of our school districts to redo their budgets on short order and rewarn whatever they're currently planning for town meeting day, because they're submitting their ballot language like
Yeah,
next week.
it's all been printed.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that. I beat up on the tax commissioner and the education commissioner when the governor proposed doing that. 10 years ago with Rebecca Holcomb and Guy Sampson.
I
He
hear.
did it for whatever act that was. Because that was the mess with the weights. And when it left here, your budgets, they didn't want schools to hit the spending cap because they suddenly got more money because their weights had gone up or gone down. And the way the House wrote it, we had it phased in up or down when it left here. The way the House wrote it, they wanted Winooski basically, but the schools that have been carrying the burden for English as a second language for well over a decade to get their money right away. They didn't want them to have to wait. I think it was 5 years or 6 years. So it was stepped up, but the way it got written was your budget was capped at 10%. And if you went over that, an increase, you had to come in and the state board yet to be created would rule on it. Well, the superintendent said, oh, your tax rate was capped this year, so you could spend up to 10% more and your tax rate wouldn't go up. And every superintendent in the state said, whoa, this is free money. And everyone, not everyone, but a large number of them spent 9.9%, thinking that their budget was capped at a 3% increase. We said it was capped at 3%, but if you went over 10, you had to do this. That was our fault. I never saw that. I assume they got sent because the bill originated in GovOps. They didn't catch it. It's, the last week of the session, we concur. And then it hit the fan. I don't want to go through that again, but that was our mistake. And we would have banked, you can't cap revenue at 4% and then spend 10% and not go bankrupt very quickly. So we had to do that. But to do it at this point would be very disruptive to schools
Should have done it in May.
and do it. It
Oh,
should.
wait,
There was a.
that wasn't amendment.
If we're giving them notice,
Or we go.
you're telling the taxpayers that you're not gonna get any worse than you've gotten the last few years, but yes, it is going to go up. But if we're going to do that, they're all right. We have to tell them what's going to happen. Now, in 2 years, we should have a second homes tax. And we should be able to go to the system where X amount of your property value is exempt from taxation. It's not like the present system where everybody's paying for their own and everyone else's rebate and rates go up. So we should be able to bring some relief there.
Well, I guess the one thing that I'm concerned about is, do we have enough headroom in the event of the worst case scenario? And that, I haven't really heard that in the administration.
No, I don't know if you do.
Well, I mean, so we give somebody a break and buy down the rate this year. How much money do we have left to deal with this worst case scenario that may develop in the meantime, from now and next time?
We got the rural health grants. Those are gonna solve all our problems.
No.
You have the contingency fund that we fund every year, so I mean, there's.
Can't pay salaries.
Reserve?
And can I just, because what we say in here matters, I know taxpayers are hurting. I know affordability is an issue. I also know Vermonters love their schools. I heard it all summer long,
They do.
ad nauseum, with tears and you name it. So we need to tread carefully. I hear what you say, Senator Beck, about the tax revolt, but I mean, we don't have polling in the state of Vermont, so we don't know that year, was it the Affordable Heat Act? Was it a tax revolt? Because the following year, almost all school budgets passed. So we tell these stories, we create these narratives. I think sometimes we just need to be careful what we're saying. Because our communities rely on our schools for everything from childcare to food to dental appointments to you name it.
I just say allowable spending growth cap wouldn't close schools. It's just saying can't allow spending to grow at a rate that exceeds.
But I don't know about your district, but our taxes are going up and we're cutting lots of positions. So where's that spending increase? Where's that money coming from? Where's that increase coming
You're the
from?
rich.
We're not adding programs.
Neither are we.
So
It's in healthcare costs, it's in.
And-
staff.
And
it's.
80%.
But
Elizabeth
we're
Sherman said
cutting,
it today.
we're cutting positions, lots of positions.
I was looking at the NEA's graph or database. We're the #1 teacher to staff ratio. in the
Like, it's not
country.
even close.
We have the most rural state in the country, guys.
No,
How do you educate kids who live on the end of a dirt road?
we have some
Part of our
kids,
constitution, we can't just forget about them.
we
No, but
We are the most rural, but it wasn't until last year that I found out that statistic was based on the number of towns you have with less than 1,000 people. We have a whole lot of towns with less than 1,000 people. I'm not sure if that's the right number. But they're a lot closer together in many instances than they are in Wyoming or Texas, where it's 50 miles. They're flat and they're laid out in hectares, but there's large distances. There are schools, and we've talked about them, that are sparse by necessity. They are up there, they're on a dirt road, you can't get in or out. We knew that when we did 46. There are towns. I'm living in a district where within 10 or 15 miles of relatively flat paved road, I've got 3 and 4 and 5 elementary schools. And 1, 2, 3, 4 high schools. Those And everybody is very attached to their school. Is that the best way to deliver education?
And then the question also is the number of kids in those schools and the number of adults in those classrooms. Not just teachers, but the various para educators and all the other army of people that we've hired over the years.
Some of the behaviors require multiple adults.
And I think we need, as part of our vision,
Mhm.
we need to be able to say, we will come up with, maybe we play with the second home tax. Somehow, well, we've got to come up with some school construction, because we'll have to add a partition or something to get all of those schools in one school, or maybe 4 schools into 2 schools.
Well,
But we're gonna,
and are we okay with putting kids on a bus for an hour? That's gonna be the big question.
I grew up riding the bus.
And
And I live in Milton.
I agree, Chris. I mean, I think
yeah.
there are a lot of
Barry
people
bus for an
who
hour.
drew or in a bus for a long time.
And I ended up here.
That's a decision we have to make. I don't disagree with you.
I
Just
think,
saying.
I just say the rural urban, I think if you look at the staffing ratios between rural schools and less rural schools and urban schools in Vermont, you will not find much difference.
And that's one of the things I'm not sure the Department of Education can tell us, but
Oh, I think they can.
we do, okay. We need to write a
It might
list
be on our
of things we
webpage.
want from them.
I think that's available.
But part of the other thing we're gonna have to do, because those schools are the building where you can have town meeting. They are the building where you can have anything. They are the only big building in town other than maybe the church or the library. And most of those don't, we had churches that didn't have restrooms, right?
And I think we gotta think about that even differently nowadays. We have town meeting in Milton and we have the Zoom option. And there's more people on Zoom. than
Oh, yeah.
people Sitting in our auditorium at the high school.
Yeah.
And we,
But
it's changing
you-
with times of,
To help schools, I mean, Roxbury has got an after-school program. I think they have a health clinic. They have a child care in their old school building. But they're not sure they can afford the X thousands. The Montpelier had to agree to pay $3,000 a year in maintenance or something till it got transferred. If we could say, we will help you somehow with that transformation, that building could still be the center of the community. Got an aging population. You could put a senior center in there and you can do senior yoga and oil painting classes. You can have a health
Sounds
clinic.
That's the comprehensive plan that we're all hoping to
Yes.
have that we don't
Well,
have.
but we don't have time to diddle around, and I'm willing for this committee to work on something like that.
If I could say one thing to set
Yeah.
around this point is, and I feel like I'm getting on my soapbox, but it's not, it's just, this is important for people to hear, at least I think a lot of us feel. I do think we need elementary schools all throughout the state. I don't want to close elementary schools, because as much as there's a Zoom option, those are important community hubs where they do more than that. It's the middle schools and high schools that I think we need to be a lot more rational and intentional on.
yeah, and to come back to that exact point. When Elizabeth Jennings said 80% of your budget is staffing.
Yeah.
Buildings isn't the issue.
Yeah,
The cost of that building is not the issue.
good point, I got you.
It's a human-centered profession. I mean, it
Right,
is
so closing
human-centered.
schools is not the issue, and it's not what I would look at. The buildings is not the issue.
If you have 4 kids in a kindergarten class, and I've had several schools with 4 kids in a kindergarten class, you're paying a teacher $68,000 a year, I assume, plus health insurance and other benefits to pay 4 kids, to teach 4 kids.
Yeah, it's right sizing your staff.
You've got to right
not-
size, because those 4 kids down, 4 kids in first grade, maybe 5 kids in kindergarten. And you get to the point where you don't have enough kids in the school to draw in enough education money to pay for itself.
But I think to that point, I think you want to talk about the educational opportunities for those 4 students or 10, however many kids are in that class. Are they getting served just as well as another school? And that, I think, I have a 1 and a 3-year-old. I want those 2 boys to have the best education that's out there.
Yeah.
And is that at a class that's 4 kids or school that has 4 kids in a grade, or what number?
Well, there's all kinds of national statistics, I think 10. It's 10 to 12, 10 to 13 in kindergarten. I mean, 4 kids is private tutoring. That's my house. I mean, I could have had a tutor in my house to teach my 4 kids.
But to your point, staffing is somewhat impacted by buildings in that you can be more efficient in your fluid use of them across, if, for example, Montpelier had 1 high school instead of 3, they're gonna achieve some staffing
Yeah,
efficiency. So buildings is a factor, but it's not the factor.
It can, but it shouldn't be the driving factor.
Oh, no,
It's not
it's
a big
the,
stuff.
we have been the highest per pupil cost in the country. We have the highest, the lowest, I forget, depending we have more adults than per student by far than any other state in the country. We used to say, oh, but we have the best education. Well, we are getting the best, Chittenden County, I think, is fine. You've got bigger classes, you've got kids. Washington County's stating it because we're relatively wealthy. You get up into the kingdom or into the hills down in the south anywhere, and they can't sustain it. And so you're getting kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade all put together. So you got 20 kids with a teacher and 2 parents, if you don't have any mental health issues. In this building, we have, since I've been in here, consistently underfunded the mental health system, our community service.
Yeah.
So you get to the last night of the session, you need to balance your budget, level funding. We need to beef up those services. We need to make sure that they can, that's a new expense for the school. We didn't pass it to them.
Mhm.
It just arrived at their door when the school opened because it's a new societal thing. My kids got out of school in the 90s. I've asked them. There weren't the behavioral, half their friends weren't depressed, suicidal. That's new.
Yeah.
And we just left it. Well, when COVID showed up, it made it worse.
Well, and then, at some point, the argument of COVID, some of these kids weren't even in school, so you can't
Right.
make the argument about those kids, COVID, so
There were all
whatever.
the dysfunction.
But at some point, they're gonna come out of it. We all went through COVID, gonna come out of it and things like that. And I know we had a presentation, not to go back to being upstairs in Ways and Means, but we had a presentation from, I think, JFO about FTEs and how that lined up with federal funding. And when the federal funding dropped off, the FTEs stayed there.
Yeah,
It destabilized for sure, because there was an infusion of money and then it went away and yeah.
and where the
So
state was
It's a problem.
religious in making sure that we didn't spend that one-time money on ongoing expenses.
Right.
And we still have felt some pain the last few years as we have had to transition off of it, but the schools didn't. And that was part of they hired, a lot of them hired mental health professionals.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to wean yourself off of, because no, teachers should not be dealing with kids having violent or huddling in corners, depressed and crying. That's not what they're trained for. That's not what they do. And we need to acknowledge that and see if we can't find a way.
Look at those missing days in the house.
It's just when I talk about it last.
Yeah,
Are we?
we are live, but we are going off because it's time to
Sounds
go
good.
home.